We had it won in 2001. We went in there with a very short, decisive operation at the outset, led by our special forces and our air power, brought in some Marine and Army infantry to wrap it up. Within a few weeks, we knocked out the Taliban and we put al-Qaeda on the run. And then we didn't have enough sense to pull out.
All right, folks, that's Lieutenant General Daniel Bolger, retired three-star general in the U.S. Army, and privileged to say he has joined us. And he, of course, is the author of a great new book, Why We Lost, a General's Inside Account of the Iraq and Afghanistan War. Hello, General.
Hello, Steve. Thanks very much for having me on.
No, I saw you, and I said we got to get the General if he could make it, and I'm so glad you could. And it's not too often you hear, you know, a U.S. General say, you know, we lost. So you are of the opinion, and what do you mean by loss? Usually the question is, what's your definition of victory? What do you mean by we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you know, take them one at a time or collectively?
Well, I'll take them one at a time and then sort of back out to a little broader picture.
Sure.
One at a time in Iraq, we went in there to try and knock out Saddam Hussein and his Ba'athist groups and army and stuff. We did that very effectively in a few weeks, lightning campaign in 2003. As you play that little clip, we did the same thing in 2001 in Afghanistan and also took the insides out of al-Qaeda. Osama bin Laden was still around, but he was a figurehead without a lot of troops left after we were done with him. That said, in both cases, we then stayed and tried to build sort of, you know, Jeffersonian democratic republics in countries that never had traditions of that, didn't really want to do it. And frankly, me, the other military guys, we're so blessed with the great young men and women in our armed forces, Steve. We thought they could pull it off. And we thought we could pull it off. And we should have been looking backwards, those very hard lessons learned in Southeast Asia and Vietnam. It's not a winner for U.S. forces to go in and try and pull insurgents out of a village to try and figure out which guy is the terrorist and which guy is the farmer. Just doesn't work. And then when we back out to the larger picture, with those two indecisive and frustrating conclusions in Iraq and Afghanistan, both countries very fragile, Iraq barely hanging together in the face of the ISIS threat. Afghans are going to be in big trouble once we pull out our combat forces in about a month. It's hard to say worldwide that we're doing anything more than holding our own. The good news is, thanks to the courage and bravery of our men and women in uniform, and I include in that our police and first responders at home and our great intel services, we've prevented another 9/11. But there's a lot of leakers, you know, the Tsarnaev brothers, the Fort Hood shootings, the incident in Times Square, New York. You know, there's jihadis on the move out there, and we have got to stay vigilant. And moreover, we got to sort ourselves out. We can't be doing any more of these counterinsurgency things.
Okay, and when it comes to Iraq, when you say we should have got out, at least you said that in Afghanistan. If we had gotten out of both Iraq and Afghanistan, I agree that we shouldn't have tried to build democracy or nation build, as they call it. But would we have seen ISIS emerge earlier? And are we going to see, just like you predict, we're going to see a problem in Afghanistan? So what's the solution to that? How would we have prevented ISIS by keeping troops there? I presume you would say the same thing in Afghanistan. We need a presence.
Yes, we do, Steve, but we need a small presence. I think with about 10,000 guys in either country, you know, we're building back up to that in Iraq because we messed it up pulling out too quick. I think we're gonna start with that number in Afghanistan, but at least from what I'm hearing from the president and others is we want to draw down quickly. You got to leave some guys to reassure the locals. It's their fight. They're going to have to knock out the insurgents of ISIS. They're going to have to knock out the Taliban that's resurgent in Afghanistan, and we got to back them up. But they must take the lead. If you got Americans taking the lead, I don't blame those Afghan or Iraqi villagers. Heck, they got the best army in the world, the best Marines, the best Air Force and Navy trying to do the job. If they've been at war for years, I'd step back and let us do it. But that's not a long-term solution. The Israelis have a term that they use that unfortunately is true, and they call it, when they go after the terrorists that they fight, they call it mowing the grass.
Yep.
And just like your grass grows up every week and you got to mow it,
keeps coming
these
back.
Terrorists grow up.
Yep.
And you got to go after them and keep them knocked down.
General, great to talk to you. Fascinating book, Why We Lost, and I advise everyone to pick it up and learn some history and get great insight. General Daniel Bolger, thank you. Give Me Five is next, folks.